Yeah, so I'll share some like ideas that anyone can practice, but I want to start off with like my story, like one of my what I consider perhaps one of the greatest experiments or projects of my life because it led to something really massive. So I spent time 4 years in the classroom teaching math. I taught 2 years at a high school, at a public high school in an inner city, and I taught 2 years at a private school in the Upper East Side in Manhattan. Before that, I had my tutoring business for many years. But all of that started with one simple project. What I did was, and it wasn't even because I was testing a curiosity, it was because I was trying to make some extra money and I wanted to figure out how could I make it at a higher hourly rate. And so I thought about, well, what do I know that is worth something? Math. Like I know that even though it's not my degree, it was like my favorite subject. I did really well in it. And so I thought I could teach this. And I knew that I could because I used to tutor back in the day, like in college and stuff like that. So I had that experience. So then I put up an ad on Craigslist. I offered my tutoring services. I basically just copied someone else's post. I said, okay, cool. I see what they do. Like, they list the subjects, they kind of put this statement, they have their rate here. So I more or less followed that template. And I said, all right, let me write my own now. And I put my own ad up on Craigslist. And then I waited. And I got the first one. This guy named Patricio from Washington University. He reached out. I'll never forget this guy's name for this reason, actually. And he needed help in game theory. And now the problem was that I learned a big lesson here. When you write that ad, be really specific about the types of math classes. I must have put something that said like university math classes or college level math, thinking that I would probably get like college algebra or maybe college calculus as the highest level, which I could handle. But game theory, I was like, I've never done that. But when your first potential client comes calling, you don't want to say no. So I just said, of course, Patricio, I got you. I can help you. We can start right away. Can you send me a copy of your syllabus? And then what I'm thinking in my mind is, I got to go find that textbook, buy a copy of it, like a used copy on Amazon, which I did for like $30. And I just got to like learn game theory 1 to 2 weeks ahead of him. Like that's it. I just got to be good enough to be 1 to 2 weeks ahead of him. He is like a fellow student in my class now. I'm a fellow student in his, and I am just trying to stay 1 to 2 weeks ahead of this kid. So that's all I have to do. And so that's what I did. Like I did that. It took a lot of prep for each session. It was way too much work. 3 hours of prep for 1 hour of actual like work. It was not a good deal from a business perspective. It was definitely not scalable, but it was fun. I actually enjoyed it a lot, and I actually did not do anything with it. So that was a date, right? I went on a date. I went on a few dates, but no commitments. We're not going steady. We're not going to be a couple. We're not going to be a thing. So I'm just going to like step away for a little while. And I did. I didn't work with anybody after Patricio for like I think 4 months or 5 months. But then I was like, man, that was fun with Patricio. We had a good time. That was an interesting like few dates and all that. I wonder if there's someone else out there I could find. And I found a job at a learning center where I could just work for them on an hourly rate and then go in after my office hours because I was working a day job. So I was the 9 to 5er back then. And I found this thing I could do after I come home from the office and just go to the learning center, which was like 5 minutes or less from my apartment. So I'd go there after work, spend like 3 hours maybe a day, 2 to 3 hours a day, maybe total like 10 to 12 hours a week, if that. And I loved it. I loved that. Well, long story short, from there, like 8 months after that or so, and I wrote this recently in a blog, in an article on my blog at rogerosorio.com, but I ended up like 8 months later quitting my job, getting on a path to really like start spending more time and trying to figure out how to get closer to teaching math or working with math students in some capacity. Ended up back in grad school, started a tutoring business. And then after several years of doing that tutoring business, I got my first break where I got to get into the classroom. And so, it all started with one project. So to answer the question, like what could someone else do? Maybe it's an ad on Craigslist, or maybe it's an ad on some platform, and you can just offer that skill on your own on the side for fun. You don't have to charge a killer amount. I didn't. I charged $25 an hour for that very first posting. That was it. Didn't charge more than that. It's crazy because when I finished tutoring, and like my last tutoring gigs were like in 2016, I think, or 2017, I stopped tutoring on the side, and it was only side stuff I was doing back then. I was charging 200 an hour. So like the rate started really low, like really low. But what I would recommend to people, other ideas that you could do to test out an interest, commit to writing 10 articles about it. Don't commit to starting a lifelong blog. No, commit to writing 10 articles. In fact, if you don't even want to start the blog site, put it up on like LinkedIn articles. You could put it up there, or create a quick little Medium account, because that's pretty easy. Like, you don't have to do too much website stuff or anything like that. Or if you want, just go to WordPress and, whip up a quick one, the simplest looking blog, literally like nothing crazy. Put a picture of your face somewhere in there, put your name on it, and then just, call it whatever the heck you want to call it based on those 10 articles. But if, let's say, you're interested in the food space, in the culinary space, in the whatever, something along those lines, and you're an accountant, and so this is not your jam normally, go out and just, like, find people to interview, find topics to study and research, and simply write articles about them. Write 10, no more than 10. Keep it simple. You want it to be fully defined, that it ends relatively soon. This project shouldn't go more than 2 to 3 months. And then you get to like finish something and see if you still like it or not. Another idea is to do similar to what we're doing, you and I, with our podcast, except I think we have longer term goals with it. But you could do a 10 episode series. You can just say, I'm going to do one season of one podcast. That's it. Because I'm not as into the writing, but I do love having conversations. So if I could just record the audio of that conversation, voila, I got that going on. So let's just do that. For other people, it might be, I love video, I love speaking into the camera. Great. Then create a YouTube series. Like, just do on your YouTube channel based on your Gmail, just create a 10 episode thing. Like, just make 10 videos on whatever the heck it is that you like doing, and just explore that and share that. These are things that are publicly available, and that's a key right there. Because what you want to do is, there's two things that I always tell people you want to do with a project. One is, you want to validate your interest in it. Actually, there's three things I say. One, validate your interest in it. Two, you want to validate the space. You want to see, like, is this a need? Like, is there a market here for something I could eventually do one day or get involved in? But three, this is like the one that I think is actually maybe even more important than the other two, or at least as important as the other two combined. And it's to validate yourself to the market. Because if you're going to eventually pursue this thing, you need a reputation, you need a brand, and you want to make sure that people say, like, this person is someone in this thing. Like, they do the work. At least they're not certified. It's not a, culinary school trained chef. It's not a, someone who studied food for their entire lives. But you know what? They created a really interesting series of interviews with chefs, food company founders, and all of these people. Super interesting. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, or a series on YouTube, or, an article series that turned into a small book. I mean, right there, you are now way different than every other person who has no experience in cooking or in the food world, who now says, I want to start a company in the food world. People are going to be like, okay, why you? And they'll be able to say nothing. And you'll be able to say, well, I'm doing this kind of stuff. Take a look. It's over here. Let me share the link with you. So it's got to be public.